Unexpected Prime Day purchase. That's the theme for this week. Hello, you're watching the development vlog for Shokken, a restaurant waitlist management tool that is currently available on Google Play Store and iOS App Store. This is Bill from Shokken, and this is week 78 of development. The current status, as I just mentioned, the app is finally ready and approved for distribution in the United States. Not really anywhere else, apologies. Given the compliance requirements for this app, I'm definitely only going to start with the United States first. And I'm quite excited. There are two people who signed up. That's interesting. I don't know how they discovered the app, but they did. And it's interesting to see that somebody is actually using your app. Now, they're not paying for it yet because they're not using the SMS feature in the app. And then the rest of the app is completely free, right? And if you start using the SMS, it's going to start costing me a lot of money. That's when you actually pay for the app. Nonetheless, the next step for the app journey is marketing. I have an engineering background. I don't really do marketing. I don't know how to talk to people. So that's actually a part of the learning experience. And I'm mildly dreading this a little bit. It's an uncharted territory. Now, that said, last week I did finish this very spiffy looking one-page flyer that I can bring with me when I show up in person at restaurants, busy restaurants, who might actually need this particular app. And I can hand this to them and be like, oh, are you interested? Please take a look. Did a little bit studying in terms of how you actually market, how you actually talk to people, gaining trust. Try not to get yourself kicked out the door in the first 15 seconds. Because a lot of people are getting pitched at like every day, right? And people get tired of the door-to-door salespeople. I'm one of them. When people come up to the house and go, oh, no, we're good. We don't need solar. We don't need water softener. Despite the fact that we do have solar and we do have water softener. So the need is still there. It's the sort of the discovery of the need and the hookup of the services. That's the part that I need to actually do with regards to my future users. Anyway, so that's the plan ahead of me. And what I wanted to talk about this week is Amazon Prime Day. Just on a side, it's interesting how when Amazon decided to have this Prime Day thing, everybody was rolling their eyes. Oh, we don't need another Black Friday. We don't need another consumerism holiday. And everybody's swearing that, no, we're not going to follow suit. We're not going to buy stuff. And lo and behold, 2-3 years later, I think by now Prime Day has been going for a couple of years. Everybody's doing the Prime Day stuff, right? They're not going to call it Prime Day. For instance, if you go to Best Buy, it's Tech Fest Day. Tech Fest, not Prime. Tech Fest. And then if you go to Costco, it's the Member Appreciation Week. Member Appreciation. Thank you for appreciating us. In any case, so Prime Day, a lot of retailers are putting stuff on sale. I wasn't particularly looking to really buy anything. The interesting thing, though, is that last week, the current CEO, soon to be not the current CEO, Tim Cook, CEO of Apple, made an announcement with regards to, oh, now we probably will have to raise prices on our products because it's difficult. It's tough out there. For a moment, I thought that he was just talking about perhaps future products, not necessarily current products. Lo and behold, that's not true. So yesterday, Apple raised almost all their products prices. Anywhere from 10-15% all the way to 54%. I think the worst hit one is the Apple TV of all things. I think that one saw a 54% increase in price if you want the 128 gig variant with the Ethernet and Thread radio. In any case, by the way, if you were trying to configure a Mac, and then originally if you want to add 64 gigabytes of memory, an additional 64 gigabytes of memory, it used to be $1,000 upcharge, now it's $2,000. That's a 100% increase. We're not talking about those. We're talking about if you were to get a base one, and base one, the price hike is the most significant on the Apple TV. In any case, I wasn't really looking to buy anything from Apple because gotta save money. Hard times are ahead of us. That said, I have been thinking about getting one for some time, simply because the very annoying thing about developing apps on iOS for distribution is that they require that you have a Mac OS device to run apps on a simulator, to debug, to build the app. Well, that's technically not true. To run the app. You can build the app So I'm sorry, I take it back. Yes, you have to have a Mac OS device to build the app. And my app is cross-platform. You can't really avoid turn a blind eye to the iOS market. Arguably, it's a much bigger market than the Android market. By the way, this is actually quite interesting. This is a side note. Android Marketplace has actually cut down their commission from 30% to, well, 30% for everybody. It used to be 30% for everybody. And then if you're a small business, the first $1 million revenue is 15%. And then they recently just cut it down to, I think, 10% or something like that. They reduced it. Although I think they are charging a 5% service fee or something. I can't quite remember. So at the end of the day, it's a wash. But nonetheless, it's good gesture. The Developer Appreciation Day. In any case, but the Android market is arguably ignorable because most people are using iOS tablets, right? So if you want to develop on develop an iOS app, iPad OS app, you have to have a Mac. Now I do have a Mac sitting right here in front of me, right here, and it's actually in clamshell mode. It's a server. I'm really not actively developing on it because it's not a very enjoyable experience to develop on it. It's a MacBook Air, M3 generation, with 16 gigabytes of memory. Now, sounds like a lot because, people say, Apple Silicon Unified Memory has some magic, which it does, because, the PC side, it really hasn't caught up with the rare exception of some like ARM-based processors from maybe Qualcomm. And the most significant x86 one is from the AMD 395 plus AI Max, whatever that chip is. But anyway, so like 16 gigabytes is plenty for the vast majority of the people. And macOS is actually quite intelligent with regards to memory swap. But the thing is, if you want to develop stuff, so for me, I'm using Android, well, technically I'm using IntelliJ, which is the base version of Android Studio. Android Studio is the piece of software they have to use to develop Android apps, or Kotlin multi-platform apps. So it doesn't necessarily have to only run on Android. If you use Android Studio, it can actually build iOS apps. That's the neat part, and that's the part that I'm using to develop this app. So I don't have to write for both Android and iOS. I can write once, and then I can distribute to 2 different platforms. That said, though, again, if you want to develop to iOS, you have to use a Mac. So what this Mac does, it's literally just a builder. I don't really do anything on it. It's a server, right? So I develop on my desktop, and then I send the build job essentially directly to my Mac, and then it builds it. Problem is that with 16 gigs of RAM, it's really not a lot. So like if I turn on the computer right now and I actually look at the memory pressure during its build, it's in the red. So now it doesn't prevent you from building. It's just excruciatingly slow. So it's okay. Like maybe one day I'll upgrade to a better computer and it'll build faster. Currently, I think an iOS build would take me maybe half an hour. And this is like not insignificant because with my GitHub tickets, right, GitHub issues and stuff and pull requests. So when I push code up into my repository as a PR, a pull request, they're gates, they're tests essentially that the pull request would have to satisfy. This is one of the guardrails that I've put in place to make sure that the code base is of reasonable high quality and that there is minimal chances of regression and data integrity and privacy and security, all of that. Like these checks are in place every time when I change anything to the code. And these checks require that iOS gets built so that it can exercise the entire iOS app before the GitHub issue can be accepted. Sorry, the pull request can be accepted or merged, in other words, updated in the repository. So every time when I do that, every push, this poor Mac would have to run about half an hour just chug along to build something up. And obviously, as you can imagine, this can actually drastically slow down my iteration speed. And, up until now, it's okay. I'm starting to feel the strain of it now that, like, for instance, this week I noticed an auth issue that I really needed to fix real quick. And I'm finding myself not spending a lot of time coming up with the fix, but spending a lot of time sitting through the deployment process for this, godforsaken iOS app to build. So I was thinking to myself, hey, maybe I should upgrade. But being somebody who's into gadgets and stuff, I'm going to wait till the next generation comes out. When in actuality, this is a tool. I should have never actually done that. Like, if I needed this tool, I'd get this tool, right? But the tech gadget person inside of me kept screaming, no, you should wait for the M6. Oh, when it comes out, it's going to have an OLED screen. When in fact, it doesn't impact my development at all. It's just going to look prettier, sure, but no. Was it going to have a thinner chassis? Who cares? Anyway, so I held out when the new M5 came out earlier this year. I was like, I can hold on to it. I was like, oh, I'm virtuous. I can hold on to it. And this is one of the very rare cases where there's the non-buyer remorse. Now I'm really tasting the non-buyer remorse, because as soon as they announced the price increase, I checked the configuration that I wanted. It went up by $2,600 in terms of cost, just like overnight. If I knew this the night before, I would have placed the order and I'd be like, yes, I'm golden, but no. So what do you do? And the amazing part of Apple price change is that, I mean, this is a tightly run ship. So when they announced the price increase, all the retailers caught up. Everybody, like including B&H, Best Buy. Amazon is a little lagging behind because I think Amazon is big enough to say no to Apple. But everybody else caught up. So there's really no sort of arbitration that you can do. Arbitrage that you can do to get a lower priced Mac somewhere else, whereas the official Apple Store and everybody else has actually increased their prices. Micro Center, I think, is another one that held up for like about half a day before they succumbed. And fortunately, Costco was holding out for like 2 more days. I think they put up the sale for their current line of a Mac, and then they had an end date, and they were just going to, and that end date of the sale happens to be 2 days after the price increase announcement. And then Costco being Costco, they're always appreciating their members, doing their members right. And this is not sponsored, hey. They're like, okay, we're going to honor that. So I went to Costco and placed an order. And it's amazing how I really should have done it a lot sooner. Now, unfortunately, Costco doesn't have the exact variant that I was looking for. I was looking for something with at least 64 gigabytes of memory. Oh, that's a lot. Yes, that is a lot, because Android Studio by itself can eat up about 16 gigabytes of RAM. That's outside of macOS. And then you'd have to tack on emulators. And if you think about the number of emulators that I have to run, I have to run a phone emulator for Android, phone emulator for iOS, tablet emulator for Android, and tablet emulator for iOS. Because again, I'm developing responsibly. In other words, the UI adapts neatly between a phone, if you're a busy host and you just want to use your phone, or a tablet, right? Unlike Instagram, which I'm understanding today, it still doesn't have a tablet version. It's just a blown up iPhone version. And in any case, so I need 4 different emulators when I'm developing to make sure that, hey, this looks right on the big screen as well as it does on a small screen. And for each platform, I need a set of 2. So 4 emulators, and each emulator easily eats up 4 to 5 gigabytes of memory. And if you do the calculation, like before really anything else, before OS, I'm already well into the 30 gigabytes of RAM territory. So 64 really buys me a little bit of comfort, but it's really not outrageous. Now, 128 would have been outrageous. That's the one that I was looking at. I really want a 128. You know, I can run a little local LLM on my machine. That'd be really cool. But now I think it's officially out of my price range. In any case, so from Costco, I purchased the only configuration with 48 gigabytes of memory, and that's probably what I'm going to have to settle on for the next couple of years. The rumor has it that M6, they changed the roadmap given the chip and RAM shortage. So M6 is likely going to come out either this year, or late this year, or early next year, 2027. And it's just going to be the base chip. And in other words, you can't configure RAM for more than like 24 or 32 gigabytes, which would be woefully insufficient for me. And the it's likely that they're going to skip the M6 chip and then they're going to jump straight to M7 for the Pro and the Max. I don't know. Like there's like, you know, Apple rumors where there's plenty of them because, you know, it gets attention. In any case, the Pro and Max version, in other words, the chips where you can configure the RAM to be more than 32 gigs likely won't come out till end of 2027, if not 2028. I can't wait that long. And by then, the price would probably be astronomical. Astronomical. So didn't wait any longer. I didn't make my purchase. The interesting thing, though, I just actually went to Costco. There was a clearance from Costco for a 14-inch MacBook Pro base model, 16 gigabytes of memory, 512 gigabytes of hard drive on sale on clearance for $1199.97. If you're a Costco shopper, you know 97 cents is an indication of clearance. And that sign at my local Costco have been out for weeks because, you know, like I don't live in California where there's a lot of tech heads who understands the value of those products. And then, you know, in California, apparently those things get picked up just like that real quick. But here, no, deals last a little bit longer, you know. And it's interesting, as soon as the price increase announced, I'm almost certain scalpers showed up everywhere in the valley and picked up everything. So I was checking online for online stock today that the price hike was announced. Stock got cleared out, like completely. It is amazing. It's like seeing history happen in real time. And that's the I suppose the update for this week. I mean, Prime Day. This wasn't even a Prime Day purchase. It's just like last minute panic buy of a piece of hardware that I actually need for my development. And I thought that this is an interesting story and it's related to my development progress. And I'd just like to share. In summary, I am working on marketing, and in the next 1 or 2 weeks, I'm going to show up at restaurants and start telling them to, hey, please download my app. And of course, I'll keep you updated. That's it for this week. I will see you next week.